Welcome to the Putting the Human Back into Technology podcast with Gethin Ellis and Mark Williams. Here at gethinellis.com, whilst we know physical fitness is essential, our mental health is vital too, and our PHIT podcast is all about putting the human back into technology, aka PHIT. Now, one thing we can probably all agree on is the last year or so has been unprecedented, so we wanted to seek out the views of technology leaders, business owners, consultants, and many others from a range of different businesses and organisations to discuss with them the impacts on their business, their humans, and their technology and how they see the future unfolding. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Carl Grieves, and in this episode, Mark is joined by our colleague Rachel Ashibi.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so welcome back, and we're still with Carl Grieves, the Divisional Director for ClearCourse Membership Services. Welcome back, Carl.
Hello, Mark. Yes, nice to see you again.
Welcome back, Carl.
Indeed. So, Rachel, why don't you ask the first question in this section?
Okay, yeah. All right. So, Carl, thinking about digital transformation, so do you think most organizations need to transform, or is it more about a continual improvement, and why?
Okay. Good question. So with the end in mind, my answer is going to be continuous improvement, and I'll tell you why. From my perspective. So digital transformation actually is a headline that actually serves organizations really well, and it serves the market really well because it compels customers to invest in technology, right? It really does, and it's massively, in my opinion, over the course of the last few years, and put a headline inside of organizations that we need to digitally transform, right? Because it's everywhere, right? All of the vendors that are talking about digital transformation, all of the management consultancies, everybody. So it's proliferated into the sector, the sector I'm working in, and no doubt other sectors as well, as something to do. And digital transformation for many organizations means we need to go and invest in digital. Okay, and that's good. But actually, I think the headline of digital transformation only takes you so far, because actually there's an age-old requirement of organizations for people, process, and technology, right? We have been talking about people, process, and technology, for a long time.
Forever.
My personal opinion is digital transformation really takes care of the technology part of that. Yeah, because organizations go out and work with people like us to invest in technology for their business. It takes care of some of the process of that, but because process is not in the headline, sometimes the process part of it can be a little bit second to the technology. And also because people is not part of the headline of digital transformation, I think we could all do better in making sure that we treat, actually, I think in summary, we treat technology, people, and process equally. Yeah, and I think digital transformation is a good trigger for people to invest in technology with people and process. But and I don't have a new heading, and I don't have, the digital transformation is served as well. But I think continuous improvement is naturally the only way, and the way people or organizations should think, because continuous improvement by its design will encapsulate people and process and technology and all of those things. So I think, just to elaborate on that a little bit further, I think, organizations like the ones I work with customers who in previous years have wanted to invest in a piece of technology and go live, and when they go live, everything will be fine, right? Mark, you're laughing at that. And organizations are much better now at knowing that when you go live, it's the kind of beginnings of the journey.
Yeah.
So there's work to be done still, from my perspective as a partner or supplier to organizations. There's work we need to do to ensure that customers know when they go live, it's not the end of a project, it's the beginning of a transformation program. So yeah, I think in summary, digital transformation serves customers well because it's a trigger for customers to invest. I think customers, and partners then need to quite overtly focus on continuous improvement thereafter.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer. I'm going to go on to the next question, but it's actually really, we should probably almost merge these two questions, the first two questions in this section together. But I'll make an observation, and it's me being pedantic because I want to be pedantic from time to time. That there's probably a fourth now in the people, process, and technology strapline, which is people, process, data, and technology is probably what what there is, but you and I would have had data under technology, I think, in the in the previous years, Carl, I suspect. Very interested. We talked a little bit about it in part one, but very interested in this sort of this people and process bit. And let me state the question, and then I'll paraphrase it a little bit, and then invite you to answer. But everybody out there says, "Oh, we want to drive more value from our data and technology." But also, every person we've interviewed on here, and everybody I go and chat with when I'm doing my consulting, it's all about getting the people to work together, and help drive that organisation forward. And this question really is about the balance of investment decisions in people and or technology and data and process as well. But I think thinking to your answer into the previous question, go live's the start. And that's very interesting. Someone we both know well. Their mantra was always very much about benefit realization starts at go live. It doesn't end at go live. And there is something about how you get the people's mindset into wanting to go on and make that continual improvement change, their desire to do it. And how they come up with the ideas, because all the exec types will go, oh well, we'll expect the people to come up with the ideas, because they're right. People at the coalface know what's going on, in the business. So, what's your thoughts on that balance between people and technology investment decisions, and I guess there's a how you, thinking about your previous answer, how we get more of the people and the process side of things, because that's what you were alluding to, wasn't it? That you're doing some of that with your content learning that you talked about, for example, in part one. Right, I've definitely waffled on for too long now.
All right. I think we should hone in on the data part of what you're talking about, actually, because I think it's, and again, this is only my perspective, right? But I think organizations have a desire to drive value from data, and they want to be data-driven organizations. But I'll be bold enough to say, actually, both customers and suppliers generally, we're not close. We're nowhere near. We're nowhere near at that stage, right? Now, what do I mean by that? So, inside of organizations, obviously data is really valuable. It's key, and at the transactional level, I think we have that sorted, right? So at a transactional level, we know the data that we need to know. So whether we're processing financial information, processing payments, managing online applications, registration, certifications, we have all of the data that allows us to we process all of that data correctly, right? But actually, there's another angle to this, or another kind of leap forward, which is, how do we now utilize that data to make data-driven decisions? Yeah. And actually, there's progress we all need to make in that area to help organizations to gain insight from the data that they store, not just process it, but to gain insight from it. And I've thought long and hard about this over the last few years, and I'll tell you why. So Silverbear, one of the Dynamics businesses that I've been involved with for a long time, about 3 years ago, created what is called a renewals predictor. Okay. Now, how that works is through effectively Power BI and some Azure machine learning algorithms, we can tell a membership organization when a member is what their propensity is to renew their membership, right? And we can do that based on their previous behavior. Yeah. So we can run a program that allows us to give organizations on a month-by-month basis very clear visibility at an individual level of the members that might not renew. Okay.
Presumably it's some sort of weighted scoring system that, I don't know, 5 is they're definitely going to renew and 0 is they're definitely not, or something along those sorts of lines.
And it's based on, how they've engaged with content, how quickly they've paid their bill, how they've contributed into a community. It's an algorithm that just scores their engagement, right? So it's an engagement score. Yeah. And actually what we can then provide to our customers is a list of members who might not renew in the next 3 months, and therefore, Mr. Customer, here's a list of people you need to ring.
Yeah.
Right? Because these are your customers that are at risk, right? So we can do all of that. But interestingly, very few, virtually zero of our customers buy it.
Really?
So the question is why, right? And that's when you then start asking yourself, why do they not buy this? Because ultimately, or subscribe to this, because it gives them very clear information about who they need to target. Let's be really commercial about this. There are customers that might leave you. We are telling you who those customers might be. You should go and engage with them before they leave. And I think, and I'm going to talk in very broad strokes here, I think it's because actually culturally, organizations, they're just not quite data driven yet. They're just not quite there. They don't have the kind of consciously or unconsciously that mindset. They don't have teams set up to deal with that level of data. And actually as well, I think so part of it is customers are just not quite culturally data driven yet, but they'll get there. And I think actually from the supplier's perspective, from my perspective, from Silverbear's perspective, because that's the organization that invented this, this tool. We're not quite there yet either, because actually the barrier to entry to have this service is relatively high. You've got to spend, 5 figures,
right,
to get the service. So you then need to spend 4 figures a month in order to keep receiving the service. And there's a bit of hard labor required in order for us to serve that data up to you on a month-by-month basis. And actually, so we have work to do here to make it a much more an easier service to adopt and an easier service to receive. And I'll give you what I think is a good example of how everybody, myself included, needs to move to a more data-driven type mindset. Is I've been receiving an email in my inbox for probably a year every morning from Cortana.
Okay.
So for every day for a year, I've been receiving this email and immediately deleting it. Right? And literally 2 weeks ago, I decided to open it because I didn't know what this thing was. I just delete it. It's at 6 a.m. every morning. This thing will pop in. And I'll be getting dressed for work or what have you, and I just delete it because I think I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to engage in that. I've now engaged in that email that Cortana sends me every day, and it's brilliant, right? Because every day it tells me what it's reading my emails from the previous days, and it's asking me whether or not particular actions that are inside of the content that I've been writing to other people, whether they're done or whether I need to be reminded of them, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is we all have work to do to be better at providing data-driven solutions to customers. Yeah. So from a Silverbear perspective, we need to work out a way of making this a more seamless, more productive service. And then equally, I'm going to speak about our customers kind of in my own design. Customers need to be probably less like me and more readily adopting the information that's being sent to them, right? So I am my own worst example, because this data-driven algorithm or automation has been coming to me every day for a year, and I've been taking no notice of it. So, I think, without being too profound, I think managing data, processing data, transacting data is fine. It's easy now. It wasn't always easy, but it's easy now. I think we all have work to do to understand how we now take that data and use it in an insightful and informed way to make future decisions, really.
I think, Carl, we could probably do a whole other podcast solely on that topic, to be perfectly honest. And I will move us on, because we're running short a little bit of a time. But
Sorry,
I think no. It was a really, the whole thing's been very interesting. But I think just I'm going to add a couple of bits to that summary, just to see whether you nod your head or shake your head, if you like. But I think there's a whole raft of things in there. Other things are things. I live in the world of projects. Well, somebody has a bright idea, they want to do something, and then it's done. Well, that's not the way that it needs to be. You need to be encouraging inquisitive people all the time to be thinking of of what that data is telling them. That's your brain is now suddenly switched into, oh, that's interesting. What's Cortana actually telling me? And so you do need that inquisitiveness.
Yeah.
And so you do need that culture. You do need the right people, but you also need the frameworks as well. And you also need. And I suspect one of the challenges for organizations is this sort of keeping the lights on balance versus making progress balance, and they're probably like the anthill, Rob, running as fast as they can under the surface, or a swan, right, or whatever. Yeah. Trying to just keep up with all the inbound stuff, if you like. I can't attune their brain, not intellectually, but at a practical application level to. Actually, there may well be more value, for example, in following up the Bell distribution curve that you probably give people, saying, X% of people are in the, you really need to ring these people now, Y% are in the, actually you need to email them, Z%, it's fine, and so on. So I think there's a whole raft of things for organizations to get their heads around there. And that is actually people, process, data, and technology, isn't it? It's all of those things together, and they probably need a project to sort it out. But the real issue here is making it happen on an ongoing basis, I think, and not just a one-off and once and done type thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, Cortana, it's a small thing that helps to kind of express my kind of opinion of it. But the key thing is, I never asked for it. I never commissioned it. Yeah. I never asked for it, but I now get provided it. And I think actually as a partner and a supplier, that's how we should be now thinking, which is how can we provide data, insights, and intelligence to our customers, even though they're not commissioned it. That's probably where we need to get to.
There's the Henry Ford horses and cars example in there, isn't there? I think somewhere as well. But anyway, let's move us on. Rachel, you'll go for I think it's question 7 in the list.
Yes, it is. Okay. Hi, Carl. Can't see you again.
Hi.
Okay, so what advice would you give your younger self or those looking out to start, their careers?
So I won't so much give this advice to my younger self, but I'll give this advice to people perhaps starting out or changing their career, and it served me well. And the advice is, I think, don't presume a role is too big for you. Yeah. I think there's 2 parts to my advice. One is, don't assume a role is too big for you. So if opportunity comes your way, and you've got a hesitation about whether or not that role is too big for you based on your previous experiences, generally that opportunity comes your way because you've got the right behavior, and you may not have the right skills. And the point I'll try to make is skills can be taught. You can learn skills, but in my personal experience, learned behavior is much more harder to achieve, right? So chances are, if you're starting out in your career or changing your career pathway, chances are if somebody somewhere offers you a role, they're offering you that role because you've got the right behavioral traits for it, and you can learn them. So that would be one part of the advice I'd give. I give others, if that helps. I think the other part of advice, which has probably also served me well over the years, is if you see something inside your organization that you're not happy with, or you can improve, or you can add value to it. The other headline for me is assume the role. Yeah. Now you need to be you need to be careful here that you seek permission, right?
Okay.
But you don't necessarily need to seek approval. Okay, and I think there's a distinct difference between the two things. And generally the people I work with now and the people I have worked with in the past who add real value, and their career pathways accelerate quicker than others, is when they see something that needs to be done, they assume the role and take care of it. They don't wait to be asked. They're respectful and they seek permission and go through all the necessary kind of checks and balances perhaps that you need to go through, but they don't sit and wait. So a headline, don't presume a role is too big for you. Chances are you've been offered it because you've got the right behavior. And the other one is assume the role at the when you see it, assume it and own it.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's finish up with tell us a fun fact about yourself, Carl, that nobody else knows. Or maybe your wife knows.
So this is probably the hardest question to answer. And I'll tell you why. I a couple of nights ago, I sat with my wife and my 12-year-old son, and I said one of the questions, and my 12-year-old son did the role play with me on this podcast. And between my wife, my 12-year-old son, and myself, they couldn't think of anything fun. So with the risk of being a complete bore, what my son did tell me to talk to you about is my cycling, because he said you love cycling, so talk about your cycling, right? So I said, right, I'll talk about that. So it's not so much a fun fact, but it's a personal a personal thing. I like cycling, and I'm quite data driven in many respects, where I set a target for myself every year. Yeah. And the target is generally 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers a year. I make sure week on week that I stay true to those targets as best I can. And it's a great release for me, because, I have, like many people, lots of work to do all of the time. And I don't promote it and I don't kind of advertise it, and I just make sure I achieve it year on year. So I set that target and I go off and do it. And I suppose at a personal level at the moment, I'm a little bit behind. I'm about 500k behind where I need to be.
You need to give yourself a performance review then, Carl.
I need to give so anyway, so next week I'm delighted. Next week I'm going away with some friends to Mont Ventoux in France next week for 3 days to try and catch up on the numbers.
Binge cycling, is it? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So and I think that's the point. So a fun fact about me is I'll go away next week with my mates to make my numbers up. We'll go up and down Mont Ventoux 3 times. It's 5,000 feet and 22k long. But actually, we'll have loads of good wine and good food and have a good fun break from work at the same time.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Very good. Okay, well, thanks very much, Carl and Rachel too. That concludes this episode of the PHIT Podcast. So we'll see you next time.